This podcast is powered by Hype Girl. Hype Girl was born out of our passion and love for inspiring amazing women just like you. There is no superpower quite like being a woman, so we have made it our mission to create spaces, events, and tables where there is always room for one more, and all are always welcome. Come find out more about it at hypegirl.us.
All right, we are live with Do It Ugly with Stacey, Lyon.
That was weak.
And I'm Jenny
I love
King.
you. That was weak.
That was weak? All right, let's try again. You go.
Welcome to the Do It Ugly podcast. Here are your hosts, Stacey Lyon and Jenny King.
Hello, you beautiful ladies. It's another episode of Do It Ugly, and I am your host, Stacey Lyon, and I'm here with
Jenny King, co-host, and we are so excited to have our guest on today. It's going to be pretty amazing.
We are pretty excited.
Yes.
We have an amazing panelist from our International Women's Day luncheon here, so we can get to know a little bit about her and more details about her story. So, Jennifer Jackson Miller, welcome to the show.
Yes, welcome.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here and to be able to tell a little bit more of my story than what I was able to share at the International Women's Council, which was an amazing time, by the way. Thank you all so much for inviting me to do that.
Thank you for being there.
We were blown away that you said yes, because I think at the end of the day, you know, you're such a powerful woman, and I know that you may not always see yourself that way, but to us, you're such a powerful woman, and you're doing so many things, and I'm so often in awe of who you are. So we were just blown away that you were like, hell yeah, let's do it. So,
yes, honestly.
Thanks.
Absolutely.
And I mean, and for me, I'm like, but I'm just me. I'm just Jennifer Miller.
Yeah.
You know, I'm just a local real estate attorney. I'm, you know, a mom, a wife, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, I've had some, you know, there have definitely been some challenges for me to get to where I am. So I'm just excited to be able to tell a little bit more.
Awesome. And by the way, I feel a super kindred spirit with Miss Jennifer Miller, because I don't know if you know this, but my maiden name is Miller.
I do know
So
that.
I'm
of
Jennifer
course.
Miller, although I don't go by Jennifer. I only get called Jennifer when I'm like in trouble, when I've done the naughties.
Yes.
And then my mother uses the full name.
And only my third grade teacher ever called me Jenny. And that was the end of that, except my husband does get away with it because he likes to tease me. He'll be, hi, Jenny. And I'm like, because he knows that it grates on my nerves.
Well, oh my God.
Go ahead. Look, this is Do It Ugly. We're doing it. So
We're doing it ugly. So, Jennifer, you are an amazing leader in our community. And
Thank you.
One of the things that I'm inspired by is that not only are you a real estate attorney, but your office is staffed by only women.
That is true. Yes.
So tell me, was that intentional on purpose or by accident, or how did that happen?
No, it's not on purpose. I've honestly not found men in supporting roles that I've ever wanted to hire. They just haven't been well qualified and haven't seemed like a good fit. I mean,
okay.
I wouldn't mind having a guy around. I mean, I think there's something to be said for some testosterone to break up the estrogen.
Absolutely.
And I mean, and I will say I'm very blessed that with all the estrogen in the office that we actually like get along.
Yeah, you have an amazing team. They all do a great job.
We do. We try, you know. I mean, obviously, in this business, you can have rough days, rough weeks, months, years sometimes.
And weeks that feel like years.
But at the end of the day, we are a great team. And it's amazing that as women, you know, women are known for drama. And it seems like when you work with a lot of women, that usually there's a lot of drama. Not so much in our office. I know I personally try to keep the drama to the minimum, unless it's like client drama, and then I can't help it. But but yeah, we try to keep the personal drama, and we really do all get along. I think some of what helps is just the way the office is set up.
Yeah.
I have it. Everybody has their own office, so nobody's sharing any space, which I think also helps to give people like their downtime, so they can be you know, alone. And if they are stressed, crazy, whatever, they can shut the door. You know,
that's awesome.
And that's okay too. I just don't want to shut all the time.
Yeah.
Yes. So have you always known that you wanted to be an attorney, or what was your path to this?
I wanted to be an attorney. I never thought I had the ability. I never thought I was smart enough. So my background is that my dad is an attorney.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
He had a firm by the name of Jackson and Jessup in Northern Virginia, in Arlington, Virginia, and he was one of the premier attorneys in the very small realm of interstate commerce. So he dealt a lot with trucking and railroads.
Oh, cool. Okay.
So, and he did mostly with small and medium-sized businesses that he would represent. And up until 1984, there was a lot of regulations when it came to crossing state lines. So you had to figure out when you were doing trucking or railroads, were you paying intrastate or interstate rates? So there's a lot of rates that they had to try to figure out. So he did some work with like CSX. Another big company at the time was James River Corporation. And I worked for him. But my dad, I've come to find out my dad is like that smart that is such a small percentage of the world.
Yeah.
He can remember things that I've now come to find out is not normal. His memory, I mean, his ability to remember things is beyond the norm. He is probably one step away from a photographic memory.
Wow.
That's so impressive. Meanwhile, I can barely remember to put my panties on in the right direction many days.
I know, exactly, right?
But I love that you had that example. And so how did that translate into you wanting to be an attorney?
So seeing that from an early age, I did not think I had the ability. I didn't think I was smart enough, and I actually thought I was more like my mom. My mom is the most amazing stay-at-home mom. She was everybody's mom growing up. My friends told my mom things that they never told their own moms.
Wow.
I mean, she was, when there was a problem going on with them, that was the mom they went to. They called her mom. I can't tell you how many friends lived with us because they were having issues at their own homes.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, when girls were having problems with their boyfriends, they went to my mom. My friends wouldn't take me out and do certain things because they didn't want my mom to be upset if we got caught. So yeah, I mean, I was a good girl out of a group of not so great people. I never felt like I fit in. I come from, a fairly wealthy area of the country, Northern Virginia. I went to Langley High School, which is, I don't know that it is as much as it was, but it was one of the top high schools in the U.S. I mean, I went to school with Justice Scalia's kids.
Oh, wow.
When Gephardt ran for president in the 80s, his kids, we didn't have Secret Service back then, but the other high schools they would play jokes where they would have what's called Langley Day, and they would drive their parents' cars to school, and they would dress up in their parents' clothes and make fun of us. But I rebelled against all of that. I didn't want anything to do with that, and I didn't want an education. I wanted to get married. I wanted to have children, and that was my whole goal. So
Which would have been a beautiful goal, had that been what you had done.
Yes.
Yeah.
So because education is super important to my dad, he found out from watching his dad hit the ceiling because of education, that my dad has felt as though education is everything. So, and without education, it's hard to be successful, is the way that he feels about it. So I was forced to go to college. I came out of college, I'm not going to lie, I had a 1.7 GPA. And the only reason I could drop out of college was to actually go to a counselor who recommended that I drop out of college for a year.
Okay.
Yes. So I dropped out of college for 5 years. I was an administrative assistant. I've been a receptionist. I've been a bartender. I've waited tables. The last job I did before going back to finish my undergrad was doing rental management up on the Outer Banks. Well, what I found out really quickly was that I was not enjoying living at such a point and so poor that the guy that I was engaged to at the time, we could barely pay the electric bill. Mm-hmm. And he'd be like, "Oh, it's okay. No big deal." And I'm like, "What do you mean we can't pay the electric bill?" Yeah. And coming from, Northern Virginia, we were both from Northern Virginia, and he just wanted to fish. And I'm like, "What do you mean I can't even go out and buy a new pair of pants? We have nothing." And I'm like, this is not the way I want my life to be. Okay. So I talked to my parents, said, "Listen, I'm interested." My dad was like, "Okay, what do we do? What are we doing? Where are we going?" Well, he actually ended up having a conference down in Charleston. And so I flew down, met them in Charleston, and went to the College of Charleston, went to Charleston Southern, talked to both places. College of Charleston said, "You can come in as a non-degree seeking student because your grades are so bad, we're not going to accept you on a degree seeking track. But if you prove yourself to us with 15 or more credit hours with, I think it was a C+ or better, then we'll admit you for degree seeking."
I didn't know that was a thing. Do you think that still exists today, or was that something
I don't know.
Because I've never heard of that.
I don't know. I had never heard of it either.
Okay.
So, because here I am 25, so.
Did those credits transfer over once you change categories, or was that just
from my original undergrad was actually at Radford University.
That's where I went to college.
Okay.
Now I know why you have a 1.7.
Yes. Anybody that is familiar with Radford would understand the 1.7. Yes.
I'll never forget the day that my phone rang early in the morning, and it was my dad, and he called me. And his office used to get a subscription to Playboy, because I guess that's what you did in the 80s when you were a businessman, right?
True.
And they ranked the party colleges. And I'll never forget when he called and Radford was on the top 10 list. And that was an interesting conversation.
I would be lying if I didn't tell you that was one of the main reasons I went to that school. We'll have to compare notes.
That in itself, talking about college and those experiences, could be an entirely other podcast. But keep us moving. So
now I'm at the College of Charleston.
Yeah.
I'm admitted degree seeking, and
what was the time lag there? Like between when you went non-degree seeking and when you were able to actually go in, what was the time?
a semester.
Oh wow! Okay, so
It's 50 because I'd gone back to school full time, so it was. 15. I think it was 15 credit hours, so a semester. And once you did that, you were in.
Okay.
So it was. I mean, it was great. I had so much fun. I did get decent grades. I came out with I think a 3.1 GPA. Got into working for a company down there called Blackbaud, and I was doing computer support. So I was a customer support analyst for a nonprofit software company. And then I decided I wanted to be a computer programmer, so then I left there and became a computer programmer for Lotus Notes for a small company down there. Did that for about a year, and that company actually went under. Well, in the meantime, I'm in a relationship. I'm really not happy. There is a theme here. Each relationship, it seems like I go back to school. So on the Outer Banks, I was in a relationship, decided I wasn't happy. I go back for my undergrad. Now I graduate undergrad. I'm in another relationship. And I'm like, this is not really working. So I'm like, I wonder if I can go to law school. So I grabbed a book about the LSAT and took a couple of practice exams and went and took it. And to my surprise, I made a 154, which for that exam was 65th percentile.
Wow.
Without having gone to law school.
Without law school.
Yeah, the LSAT is what you take to go into law school.
I think I just said law school. Let me just learn to enunciate today. Law school. But, I mean, pretty impressive nonetheless that you have been through all of this. I mean, let's pause for a second, right? Because when you think about women and how hard it is to start over and do the things where we feel empowered enough to make those moves, to know that you had this sort of constant reset happening in your life, still trying to find your place, and you took it upon yourself to go take a test that there are many people who are just afraid to take. I mean, some that don't ever take it because they're so afraid to take it. And you got in the 65th percentile. I mean, that took a lot of courage to even do that. So,
and I took it kind of cold because part of my issue in life has been if I try really hard and I fail, that's true failure. But if you just kind of, I'm just going to wing it and you fail, well, I didn't really
try. Yeah.
So it's okay. So the first time I took it, that was it. I was winging it. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to go take it. Well, then I went and took a class. So the company I was working for ends up going under. They go bankrupt. I come back from Christmas break. The company shut their doors. Well, within a week, I had broken up with my boyfriend. I had shut my house down and packed up the cat, and I moved back to my parents.
I love that you are so resilient in times of change like that. Most of us break up with a boyfriend and just change our haircut. You decide to just kind of grab life by the balls, so to speak.
Entire life.
And just say, I'm going to use this to catapult me forward, and I'm going to come out so much better on the other side. I'm not going to be defined by this change.
Yeah, no, I have a tendency to make very quick decisions and just go with it.
I love that. You have a strong gut inside you.
I think there's something to be said, too, though, for the fearless nature of that. Like, it doesn't always work out well, because I myself have been a lot like that, very impulsive over my life, and so I've made a lot of decisions where I'm like, that probably wasn't the best uncalculated decision I've ever made. But then you just find yourself like, okay, well, we did it, now what, right? Instead of we don't cry about it, we just move on. So I love that you have that about you. How do you find that has positioned you for where you are now? So you went to law school. So
I take the exam again.
Yeah.
I make a 160, which is actually 85th percentile this time.
Is that passing?
They are ranking you against everybody else that took that LSAT at the same time in the U.S.
So is it a pass-fail or it's just
no?
A
it's a ranking. So think about this. I did better than 85% of the other people that took the exam.
That's pretty incredible.
Is there a cutoff to get into school?
Every school's different.
Okay.
Every school, some weigh the LSAT more, some weigh grades more, some do a combination.
Okay.
My GPA was not great because they combined that really horrible Radford GPA along with the College of Charleston, and I had, I think, a 2.55 once they actually combined it. What they liked, so I ended up going to Catholic University up in Washington, D.C. I was accepted to Alabama, which is my dad's alma mater. But I could not imagine going to Tuscaloosa and spending 3 years in Tuscaloosa, because my memories of Tuscaloosa are, it was very brown and old, because my dad's an only child. So when we would go there, we were around all my great aunts and uncles who were all my grandparents' age. And my grandfather was, I think he was the second youngest or youngest of like 9. So everybody was older than him. So they were just old. So everybody was old. So it was old, it was brown, it was hot, it was disgusting, and I could not stand Tuscaloosa.
Okay.
And I haven't been back in probably 40 years.
Okay.
So on to DC, bigger and better things.
So I'm originally from right outside of DC, so it made sense to stay around there. It's funny, my parents were in their early 60s at the time, and I was like, my parents are getting older. This might be the last time, for me to spend a lot of time with them. So that was one of my decisions.
Okay.
And now the closer we get.
I know, I'm like, that's actually really young now. I'm like, that really is not that old.
That's also another podcast episode.
So I go to Catholic. I'm 30. And at this point, I have now done a complete 180 in the way that I'm thinking about life. Now I don't know if I want to be a mom anymore. I think to myself, I want a career now. Mm-hmm. It's like when it didn't happen in my 20s.
Yeah.
It was like 30 for me was my reset. I'm like, I'm 30. This is a brand new time for me, and I'm going to recreate myself.
Yeah.
And that's really what it felt like. I had an amazing time in law school. I was active in Student Bar Association, which was completely against my norm. I had never been involved in any sort of student associations anywhere. I'd always been, kind of on the fringe, looking in, didn't want anything to do with that, with any of that, whether it was in undergrad or high school. I go to class, and that was about the most that I did in terms of school activities. Yeah. So I just threw myself in. I thought, you know what, I'm going outside my comfort zone. I am just going to do this. And so I was actually in the Student Bar Association all 3 years. The last year I actually ran for president and lost to my roommate. And that's a whole nother story. So
politics.
That was a whole nother story. So but I mean, it's just an amazing experience. I met my husband while I was in law school. He was not in law school. He actually was a diesel truck mechanic at the time, living in Greensboro, North Carolina.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And we dated for 2.5 years, long distance.
Yeah.
DC. So were you out in Georgetown? Yes. Is that where you met?
No, we actually met here in Myrtle Beach.
Oh, wow.
We met at Broadway at the beach. I was here spring break my first year. He was down here playing golf with a friend of his and his dad. And one of the girls I was with was hitting on my husband. And he was not interested in her. But he was off limits to me, because you know how the girl code goes. Yes. If your friend's interested, he's off limits. And she had
already staked her claim.
Oh, she had.
Oh, girl code. Does that still exist? Is girl code still a thing? I mean, it is for me, but I feel like there's.
I always felt like it was. I don't know.
Okay, I don't know that it's quite what it was.
I mean, that was before online dating, so I don't know.
Well, I also think it's a little bit different because the three of us on this episode today are all married. So girl code for married women is very different than girl code for single women. So I think that's a whole other conversation in itself. But okay, I digress. Go ahead. Sorry.
So we started dating, and he wanted to move to Myrtle Beach because he wanted to go to the golf academy that was here at the time. So we moved here. We thought we'd be here for about 20 months so that he could get through that. And then we'd probably move someplace else, somewhere along the coast of South Carolina. And 20 years later, we're still here.
Here you are.
Yeah. Okay.
So, yes. So now we've finally moved to Myrtle Beach. Everything's great. I take the bar exam, and I go, there's no way I pass this thing. So it's funny. I'm very confident in some parts of my life, and I'm very not confident in others.
And let me ask you, can I
never
ask you a
thought I
question
was smart. Yeah.
So it's interesting to me that you say that after going through all of these things and already seeing over and over again that you're the one and you could do the thing. So what was it still in your brain that was doubting that you would pass it after all that you had already been through in getting to this place?
Taking it. I walked out of there. I mean, I can remember one section. So it's different sections that we would take, and it would be essays. And then there was a multiple choice section. And I can remember literally going in, and it was a question on UCC, which is Uniform Commercial Code. And I did not study business law at all in undergrad, I mean, in law school or even in undergrad. So I literally was like, I don't know what UCC is. I know what it is now, but I can remember walking out of that going, I have no idea if I even made sense in my answer. And it was an essay. And I'm a very fast test taker. So I have always been one of those that I'm usually one of the first people done. So here we are. Every single section, I am no more than number 5 to leave. And other people are literally scrambling at the end to even finish. And I'm like, okay, I failed this. I started applying for jobs where I did not need to have passed the bar. So my very first job here was the zoning administrator for the city of Myrtle Beach.
Okay, interesting.
And what an amazing experience that was. That was from 2003 to 2006. And it was such a cool experience because that was when a lot of the oceanfront was going up. So I was, community appearance board. I saw a lot of it develop, and it was the coolest experience. I made a very unpopular political decision that legally was correct, that a nonprofit wanted to take over a church, and they wanted to make it so that women who were trying to get out of the sex industry were going to go through therapy. They were going to give them job training, put them up in a couple apartments that were actually on site. The neighborhood that it was going to be in came out in arms. I mean, they had T-shirts printed up. Wow. They were horrible in terms of how much they did not want this in their area, which is an area actually of the Myrtle Beach that is known for having prostitutes at times.
Okay.
Yes. So I got upset because of the way things happened and went down with that. So I thought, you know what? It's time for me to do something else. And I thought, there's a job opening with the solicitor's office as a prosecutor. Let me see. So I actually talked to somebody that I knew. He gave my name to the elected solicitor at the time, who then called me in for an interview.
So at this point, did you know if you had passed the LSATs or not?
Oh, sorry. By this time, yes, I passed the bar.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
sorry. Let me back up.
Yeah.
So literally, I accepted the job as zoning administrator on a Monday, and on Friday, found out I passed the bar.
Okay.
So for 3 years, basically, I was there with my bar passage without needing it in that job, because that job you didn't need it. But I had my license, practice, so everything's good.
That's
so
such
I've been
that's
admitted.
such a testimony for, and I know that we're all guilty of this. We've all done this, where we doubt ourselves so greatly that we take the lesser and then find out it could have been the other. And that really is one of those moments looking back. It's probably like, the stories where you have the opportunity to choose your ending. It's like, ooh, I wonder what if. Not that you want to live with regrets, but you get to look back and be like, oh gosh, what if I had just believed in myself? And so the opportunity to choose to believe in yourself even more now, because you know what that looks like when you don't, is such a powerful personal reminder. I love that.
So the funny thing is, I don't really look back.
Good.
And so I look at it as everything that I've done gets me to where I am. And like when I found out I passed the bar and I'd already taken this job, I said, I'm going to give it 6 months, because I gave them my word. I had accepted this position. I said, they have me basically on I was basically on a trial period for 6 months, and then we're going to reevaluate. And so to me, it was not just an evaluation for them. It was also for me to decide if this was something that I wanted to do.
Sure.
And I fell in love with it. I mean, I really, truly enjoyed it. It was a fun experience for me.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, not every aspect was fun, but there was a lot of fun, a lot of learning, a lot of getting to know a lot of people. So it was very much, I met so many people in the city of Myrtle Beach that still I will run into.
Yeah.
And of course, they think of me as Jackson, not Miller, but that's okay. It's okay. And that's one of the reasons why I named the firm Jackson Miller.
Okay.
So, but that's getting too far ahead of myself.
So you're in the solicitor's office.
So I'm in the solicitor's office, and I was in the magistrate division. So that meant I was basically prosecuting DUI first, criminal domestic violence first offenses, helping police officers with some of their cases. I really had no desire to do like the big murders, rapes, drugs, all that. So being in the magistrate division was fun because nobody's like going to be going to jail for the rest of their lives. If you make them, if something happens, it's not quite as serious. I mean, it's still serious. Don't get me wrong. Yeah, they're all misdemeanors, and they're all held in the magistrates, which means that your maximum jail time is 30 days.
Okay. That's good to know, ladies.
And I think the maximum fine was like $500. So I mean, it was even though yes, any crime that you commit is serious and can make a DUI can affect your entire life.
Sure.
But it's not on the same realm of seriousness as felonies where, so, but I really, really enjoyed it. So, I guess it was about 2 years into year and a half. I can't remember. My timing isn't always right. After being there, my husband and I finally decided we were going to get married. So we finally decided to get married, and we get married on May 3rd. This year's 15 years.
Nice.
And not long after we got married, so we wanted to start having children, because at this point I'm 37, I'm almost 38. We already know we're behind the 8 ball, so we go to OBGYN, and I'm like, we're like, okay, what do we need to be doing, because at this point I'm like, if there are fertility issues, I don't want to wait like a year. Mm-hmm. And then, she sent me for a baseline mammogram. She said, you know what, if you're going to have a couple kids, let's do a baseline mammogram, because you're probably going to want to breastfeed, so you're going to have them one after another because of your age, so you may be in your early 40s before we can even do a baseline. So let's just go ahead and do this. Let's get out of the way, no big deal. Well, I get the call. I need you to come in for a biopsy. I walk into the office for the doctor to do the biopsy. He sits us down and he says, I can tell you have breast cancer, and I can tell you that I am 99% sure it is also in your localized lymph nodes. We need to get this taken care of as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Wow. And of course we're like, what? We've been married for 3 weeks.
We're here to have a baby. We're not here for...
That was a blow.
Yeah. So obviously the whole baby thing got put on the back burner. Literally, we never even had a honeymoon. And I started chemo, and we tried some medication to save my ovaries to try to, see if we could have children after all that was said and done. And I was very blessed that 4 months later they scanned, and they couldn't find anything.
Amazing.
Wow.
I went and did surgery. They did a lumpectomy and some lymph node removal, tested everything, and there was no pathological trace for cancer.
Awesome.
So it was amazing.
Yeah.
What gets even better is at this time, my husband gets diagnosed with thyroid cancer.
So when's the book coming out? Is the real question.
I know. So my husband gets diagnosed with thyroid cancer. So we laugh. I mean, you have to laugh or else you're going to cry sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we actually had some of the same surgical residents at MUSC do surgeries on us. Wow. And literally they did, I think mine was first, or was his first? I don't know. But whichever it was, when the second one went in, a guy walked in and he looked at us and kind of looked back and forth. And we're like, yeah, we just saw you a little while ago. And we were like, so can we have a 2-for-1 discount?
Yeah, no doubt.
Of course, they don't do that. But yeah, no, it was great. Actually, he had his surgery first because I had mine second, because his surgeon, her name's Denise Carnera-Pla. I'll never forget her. She's Brazilian. She actually came and checked on me after my surgery.
Wow.
So I thought that was really, really amazing. So, and I believe she's still at MUSC. For anybody that needs thyroid cancer issues, I hope you don't, but if you do and need a surgeon, she's amazing.
Yeah.
So, okay, so I have all that. Everything's great. I do radiation. We're cancer-free. We start talking about babies now. So we go and we meet with the specialists who say, listen, you're triple negative. So I was triple negative stage 2B.
What does that mean?
Yeah, what does that mean?
So triple negative means that you have no hormone receptors. So a lot of times you hear about being like estrogen positive, progesterone positive, or there's another hormone, HER2/neu. Okay. And so those all have extra treatments. There's extra drug therapy you can do once you're finished with your main round. With triple negative, there's not, at the time, there may be some stuff now, but at the time there was nothing else. You do your chemo, you do your radiation, that's it. And if it comes back, you may have, you're in trouble. Okay. Because there's no additional therapies that you can do to try to prevent it from coming back. But everybody's like, this is great. The reoccurrence rate for somebody with complete pathological response is super low. We meet with a specialist about hormones down at MUSC. He's like, listen, the studies show that you have no higher risk of a reoccurrence. All the studies out there really show that you should not have any problems if you decide to go ahead and have children. So we're like, okay, cool.
You rang the bell and then you moved on.
So we're like, this is great. So immediately my OB/GYN is like, okay, because of everything that's been going on, I want you to go down to the fertility, Southeastern Fertility Clinic down in Mount Pleasant. I want you to go ahead and talk with them. Let's go ahead and let's do testing, because you guys are so far behind the 8 ball, and with you just doing all of this, chemo and radiation, whatever, let's just see where y'all are, see what we need to do. So we go down there and they test us, and they give me they gave me a prescription for a drug that is supposed to help you ovulate, basically. And before we even get home, we get a phone call that the blood work came back and not to take the prescription, that basically there's no way I'm going to have children of my own.
Wow.
Yeah. So obviously we're like, what the heck? They're like, but you have an option. And next thing we know, I remember sitting in the doctor's office. He's like, okay, so here's the deal. You can use an egg donor. He said, you can still carry. You can still have a child. You can use an egg donor.
Oh, wow.
Never knew. So women actually donate eggs.
Yes, they do.
And I, at this point in time, had no clue.
Yeah.
So we were given, 4 or 5 different profiles of women, and chose one that was actually similar to me. She was in law school. She was blonde. I can't remember. She either had green or blue eyes. So those for that can't see me. I have hazel eyes that are more on the green side. She was like 5'7". I remember they said that she had and she's had a boob job. I'm like, okay, because this makes a difference.
Cool.
But her reasoning was she actually had no desire to ever have children, and she wanted to be able to help people that did.
I love that.
So we, she donated, genetically they're my husband's, because he donated, and they put them in a petri dish, and they start to, become little
embryos.
zygotes, I believe they call them.
Okay.
I love that.
So,
Please
yes.
don't make us go back to biology.
No, because I think that's what they're called. I'm not.
Is there
I
a quiz?
failed.
Is there a test, Stacey?
I failed biology.
Okay, but so your beautiful babies are
So
here.
I get pregnant. I have twins.
Twins.
Yes. Yep. We put 2 in, and they both
Overachiever,
took.
2 for 1.
Right.
Look at you.
Well, let me tell you, thank God we did, because it never would have happened again. Because
Yeah.
pregnancy and me, not so much fun. So we get pregnant. Everything's looking great. Everything's wonderful. We go in Christmas Eve. I go to give a friend a hug. Something doesn't feel right. I looked at my husband and I said, it's back. And about a week later, we went in to actually do measurements for the babies. And at the same time, they decided to go ahead and do an ultrasound of where the cancer had been, where I was feeling something, and immediately went back to the doctor. The doctor took us back immediately and did another biopsy. He goes, I'm not 100% sure, but I think it might be back. Sure enough, we get the phone call. Immediately, I go in, go back to MUSC for the surgeries, do a mastectomy, and the babies are great. Who knew that you can have surgery? Babies are totally fine. Babies basically react to anesthesia the same way adults do.
Yeah.
They
had
just
no idea.
go to sleep.
Really?
And then they wake up. So literally, as you're on the table, they're not even monitoring the babies.
Really?
They monitor them before and then after.
Not even
but
like
they're
one of
not,
the fetal
no,
or monitor?
No. And the good news was, and again, it's amazing how things happen. The doctor that was doing my mastectomy is a mom. And she had an emergency appendectomy when she was pregnant with one of her girls. Believe it or not, on the day that they're doing my mastectomy, the same anesthesiologist that did hers
Was there.
Wow.
And the on-call OB was the head of the multiples division of the MUSC OB
That's
department.
a God thing.
You will
Right
never
there.
convince me that God is not intentional and perfect in all of his
Absolutely.
timing. You will never convince me that.
Now, there
that's
were
not
no
the case.
issues. Babies had no issues. I was fine. Obviously, I'm stressed, a disaster, because here I am 31 weeks pregnant with twins, and I'm having an emergency mastectomy. So, a couple weeks after, when I find out what the game plan is from the doctors, I call my boss. Hey, here's what's going on. and they'd been so wonderful the first time around. They let me work from home. I, covered my cases. I moved things. Everything, seemed like it went well. And I call him, tell him what's going on. And he proceeds to tell me that I can't handle being the mom of twins and working full time. He tells me that he's not going to hold my job for me. We had just bought a brand new house. My husband's a firefighter. Those that know about firefighters know they don't make any money. I was the breadwinner. So I'm like, how are we going to do this? How are we going to do this? My whole being was ripped out at this moment because I identify myself with my career.
Same.
I want to identify it more as a mom, which is why now, as my kids are getting older, being a mom has become more important.
Yes.
Which I didn't think would happen, but it has become more important. I guess because they're aware of it, makes me more aware of it. But so I got told that I couldn't handle it. It wasn't fair to other people to hold the job for me for me to come back. Because at the end of the day, who knew if I was going to be cancer free? So county's policy is 3 months family medical leave. I got 3 months. From the time that I'd actually gone on modified bed rest right about Christmas anyways. So I went ahead and resigned because if you get fired from the county, you can't work for them again. And I wasn't sure that I wanted to completely
close that door.
Yeah. So I did. I resigned. So I went through chemo again. So here, I've got brand new babies, go through chemo. My parents, who are the most amazing people on the face of the earth ever. And I don't say that just because of what they did here, but just because of how incredible they are. They actually hired a nanny for us because, again, my husband Bill is a firefighter, so that's a 24-hour shift. And we knew from going through chemo before that I am not, there's some women that go through chemo and they're like, I worked through it, I was great, nobody knew except, nobody knew. I wore a wig, I covered it. I'm not one of those people. I was sick as a dog. I don't remember a whole lot.
In all fairness, you have just grown two humans, though.
True.
So
True facts.
It's
facts.
I'm honestly baffled that you were like, I was gonna go back to work with two babies, twins, and also having cancer, and you were twice, and you were gonna go back to work, and this was like just occurring to you.
Well, I knew I wasn't going to go back to work until after I'd finished chemo the second time, but yeah, no, there's no question. I was going back to work. So I go through chemo the second time, and the doctors are like, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to do this major surgery once your cancer, once you finish chemo. We're going to remove the lymph nodes on the right side of your body because it appears that it's coming back on your localized lymph nodes. And this was something that the experts around the nation basically were like, this is what you're going to do.
Okay.
Well, my surgeon actually reached out to like other top oncologists, across the nation. They have kind of like a listserv, like most of us have, and everybody said this is what I would do if it was my patient. So I finished chemo. They go do my scans. There's no trace.
Wow. And
everybody goes, well, that's not what we were expecting. They expected there to still be trace of cancer. And so now all these people who have said, we're going to do this surgery, come back and go, well, that's really like serious surgery. So why don't we just watch her?
Okay.
And I can remember going to my oncologist, who I loved. Unfortunately, he's no longer in the area, but Darren, he was amazing. And he actually had gone to the University of Alabama.
Yeah, okay.
And his uncle played with my dad growing up.
Look at that.
So he was a Tuscaloosa guy. Okay.
Yeah, small world. Again,
right.
It's weird. And it's really interesting how things connect in life. So I remember I sat down and I was like, Darren Mullins, he looks at me and you can just see it in his face. And he's like, I don't think this is going to be it. I don't think this is the end of it. He goes, we're going to watch you. He said, but I think it's going to be back within a year. I'm like, great, thanks, cool. So I got scanned every 3 months, and I was freaking out so bad I would get literally second scans about every 6 weeks because every little thing, and scar tissue feels weird, and so everything felt weird, and this is hard, and why is this feeling like this? And I was in there all the time. Let me tell you, these girls know me. I've now done closings for half of the girls that were doing my scans because I got to know them so well.
Your anxiety had to have been
It was horrible.
Just
it was
waiting
horrible
for the other shoe to drop, right?
Oh yeah. So I get through the year, and I'm like, I made it a year. He's like, I know, and he goes, but I'm not convinced that this is it.
So you can't celebrate yet.
No. So then we moved to, I think for 18 months I did scans every 3 months. Then they moved to me every 4 months, and then they moved me to every 6 months. I've stopped getting scanned when I hit year 10. I finally said that's it. But I remember before Dr. Sutton left the practice, I had one, my last appointment with him, I looked at him and I said, you were wrong. And he goes, and I wish I was wrong more often.
Yeah.
That's amazing, yeah.
So, so then I had to reinvent myself. So I had a neighbor who was a real estate agent. She goes, well, why don't you just become an agent? And I was like, you know what? I've always loved real estate. Let me do this. So I went and sat for the exam, because as an attorney, you don't have to take pre-licensing. So I went and sat for the exam. I passed my broker's license, and then I sold for 2 years. A local firm approached me about starting an office or taking over an office. So I went ahead and, again, didn't really want to do it, but I was like, you know what? I feel like I need to use my law license. I worked so hard for this, and I was like, why not? It sounds like it's a good gig. I don't need to be in there all the time, because I really wanted some flexibility because, of course, at this point,
Your
my twins are,
young, right?
my twins were 3 at this point. And I don't know what happened, but literally overnight that office grew. So we more than doubled our closings that year. I think we then went up another 1.5 the next year. By the time I left there, we had gone from, I think, 20 closings a month to averaging 120 closings a month.
That is impressive.
But there were some things that I thought I could do better if I went on my own. So literally I went and listened to this woman speak, and she inspired me. And I made the decision. That was a Saturday. By Tuesday, I made my decision that I was going to be leaving. And by the next Tuesday, I had given notice. If y'all can't tell, I don't really take a whole lot of time to jump into things.
But I love that
I do, and I never felt
when you feel it inside you.
Yes.
You're like, it's time, and you don't let fear creep in. You just take action almost before that gives or has the opportunity to stall you.
Yeah, I don't know. It is very interesting, though, to think about the earlier parts of your story where you were a bit more impulsive, and then now you've come to this place where it's a little bit more thought. Do you think being a mother has something to do with the sort of not
Jenny,
rushing?
that took a week instead of
4
a day.
I mean, it's not quite as impulsive.
I mean, I'm just saying.
But I mean, seriously, do you think that you're more contemplative now being a mother? Is there anything that shifted in the way that you make your decisions, or do you think you're still just as impulsive as you once were?
No, when it comes to things like that, I'm very quick. Just for instance, me buying a house. My husband hates me because literally I'm like, I think we need to buy a different house. I think we need to do this. And literally it's like, boom. So yes, we've moved 6 times since we've lived here.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So let me ask you this question. So there's going to be a lot of women listening who are either facing the challenge of starting over and feeling the embarrassment and the shame and all the things that come with that. So what's your advice to a woman who is in this place where life doesn't look like she thought it should be, but having heard your bouts of courage and willingness to do the things, even when it wasn't pretty, even when it was ugly, but you did it anyway, what's your advice to her?
Just go with it. Go with your gut. For me,
That's good.
I mean, for me, it's always been my gut. It's like, it talks to me.
Yeah.
This is what you need to do. This is the next step. And I just don't do a lot of, obviously I look at a little bit of things, to make sure that I'm making the right decision, but I'm not one that vacillates, once I make that decision, that's it. I'm going forward. I don't look back.
And everybody's hanging on for dear life.
It's fun. It's funny. You would think that, I literally would be like, okay, honey, here's what I'm going to do. And he's like, okay, cool, do it.
Do you process when you're making decisions like that internally in your mind, in your head, or do you verbalize with, your best friend, your husband, a circle, or is it all
A lot
within?
of it's internal.
Yeah.
Most of my major decisions in life, though, I've run it past my dad.
Would you say he's your mentor?
Oh, no question. No question. The man is amazing. He is amazing. So here I am backtrack, I'm in law school. Remember I told you that my dad has this almost photographic memory?
Yes.
literally, I'd be like, hey, Dad, yeah, we were studying this case and kind of here's the gist of it. I can't remember the case name for anything. And I'm like, yeah, it kind of goes like this. And he's like, oh, yeah, that's such and such versus such. I mean, the man remembered, and you have to understand that he had graduated law school like 35 years before I did. And he's just rattling this off like, oh, yeah. And he'd be like, yeah, have you learned about this? And I'm like, yeah, but I didn't know that was the name of it. So like I said, I mean, he's just so amazing. And I never had a desire to own my own firm because, again, here's my dad who started his own firm when he was 31 and was super successful. But I didn't think, I don't know, I didn't think I could until I did.
Yeah.
So what's next for Jennifer Jackson Miller?
No doubt.
I don't know. I'm very comfortable right now in my life. I have a tendency to want to have some excitement, but I'm also trying to caution myself against that. The kids are 13, so they graduate high school, in like 5 years. Is that right? They're in 7th grade, so yeah. And then we have, some plans that we'd like to do. But I'll admit, I'm very cautious about the future because I still have those fears especially of the health. I had a defibrillator put in last summer due to side effects from all the chemo that I have been through. Yeah. So I've been dealing with heart failure for a few years now. I feel amazing, and again, I feel very blessed. I think I'm like the healthiest, what would it be, the healthiest sick person?
Yeah.
Because I've had so many health issues throughout my life. But I just feel blessed. And, real estate right now is a bit of a roller coaster. Yeah. So it's never boring, but I'm much more comfortable, obviously. The whole starting the new business, growing the business. I did come to a conscious decision after being in a business where I was constantly growing it to wanting to maintain kind of a certain number because I'm happier at this number. Yeah. Which in some ways is hard for me because I have this desire to always be getting bigger and doing more. And I have to rein myself in because I know I'm happier actually doing this.
But don't you believe that part of that is because of the season that you're in? I think a lot of that, I look at different seasons of my own life and I think about, before I had my daughter, I had a much bigger capacity and desire for things. And it's not that desire is gone. It's just it's shifted right now because I'm trying to be there in all of her things and mom her well and be present. And there's no such thing as balance, but inevitably there is some level of harmony in the things. And it's okay if you feel like you need to pull back the gears just a minute to be able to be present in the spaces that you're in. Because there's going to be a day very soon, much sooner than we all would like, when those babies are going to be not there. We're going to walk by their rooms that are now messy, and we're like, oh my God, for the love of it, would you pick up a sock and stop throwing your shit all over the floor? But those rooms are going to be empty. Mm-hmm. And we're going to have all the time in the world to put that. No, seriously, but I'm just saying. But those days are coming, and we're going to have all the time in the world to put it back into high gear and do all the things. So, and it doesn't mean that you're not achieving. Your firm is still doing very well. We are actually, right now I feel great because literally our opening file numbers are back up to what they were. We had that little bit of a lull and things seem like they are wide open again. Yeah. I remember one of the girls in the office, she came to me and she was like, yeah, I've opened, so many files. And I was like, we're back, baby. Because I was like, because I'm not going to lie. I was a little stressed, over the winter. The incoming files had really gone down. And there was some concern, but things like granted, it's that time of the year that usually things do go back up anyways. But there has been a shift. There has been a noticeable shift in the market again, which is nice.
Mm-hmm. So in closing, thank you for sharing your story of perseverance and resilience and
thank you
strength.
For having me.
And
thanks for coming.
I loved getting to know you a little better throughout this episode. And just in closing, is there any final words of advice you would have for our women right now who are in it and doing it ugly every day?
You're doing a great job.
That's a great final word because I think that is something that women need to hear, and you are doing a great job, and even if it's not pretty, just do it. Momentum, forward motion is better than nothing at all.
And as my parents always told me growing up, just do your best.
Yeah.
If you do your best, that's all we ask.
I love that. Well, thank you for being here.
Yeah.
That's it for this episode of Do It Ugly. Next episode, we have the amazing Dr. Tracy Bailey with Freedom Readers and Boys and Girls Club. So make sure you tune in to our next episode. Thanks for being here. I'm Stacey Lyon.
And I'm Jenna King. And this is
Do It Ugly.